What's going on, guys? Welcome to Everything Always. My name's Michael Roman, aka Allfires. Now, you may have noticed there are a bunch of one-off X-Men team casting rumors going around, and there have been for the last couple of months. Now, I started by saying here at the channel that you probably shouldn't put too much stock in those, only because we saw what happened with the Fantastic Four, and surely the casting for the X-Men film is a ways off. With no director attached and then still drafting the initial script, it would seem we would have at least a year before we would actually start putting stock in any of the reports we got. Well, we got a major update today coming from a trusted industry insider who's been right about huge things here real recently, who's indicated that the X-Men movie may be a lot closer than you think and has some timeline updates for what's going on with the director announcement and the filming for, again, this brand new X-Men film post-Avengers Secret Wars. We're going to break it all down, but first, if you could quickly grab the subscribe button. Again, thanks to everyone who's been subbing. We've been growing at a breakneck pace, and if you haven't already, I would just kindly invite you to do so. If you want to support the channel or you're digging the content, it's the easiest thing you can do to support us. It automatically enters you for all the giveaways, and I would sincerely appreciate it. Okay, so today's industry insider update comes from Jeff Snyder. You guys can follow him over on his editorial, The In Snyder. He also appears on the Hot Mic podcast here on YouTube with his co-host Jeff Roca. And this is the guy who last year and during the summer called that Robert Downey Jr. was going to be returning as Dr. Doom months before it was officially announced. And yesterday he dropped a massive update about the X-Men reboot in the MCU. This is what he had to say. I'm now hearing that it'll begin shooting next year for a 2027 release. That means official casting news likely coming in the next few months, along with the director announcement. Now, some context for all of this. It's crazy to me that they may be filming Avengers Secret Wars and the X-Men reboot at the same time in 2026, because we just got the news that the Russos were signing a massive deal post-Avengers Secret Wars, and this coming from trusted industry insider Daniel RPK, who's basically the #1 source in the Marvel scoop game, that the Russos were sticking around after Avengers Secret Wars to basically oversee the Mutant Saga and the X-Men movie. Now, it didn't officially say they were attached to direct, but basically they would just be overseeing the saga, and you would imagine that's so that they can keep continuity there and then direct some of the future Avengers or major crossovers for the culmination of that saga as well. Still, you would imagine that their hands are absolutely full as they focus on Avengers Secret Wars, and if they truly are overseeing the X-Men and the Mutant Saga as well, that means 2026 for the Russos would be out of control. That also means in 2027, they would have two of the biggest films dropping in Avengers Secret Wars in May, and then we assume this X-Men reboot in the fall after Secret Wars is done. And what better way to not sort of drop the attention span or have people lose interest after Avengers Secret Wars than to drop the X-Men movie right after. Now, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Yes, I am well aware there is a February mystery date floating around on the calendar for early 2027 before Avengers Secret Wars, but come on, that's not the X-Men reboot. Could you even imagine trying to write that film in that context, knowing that it would be butted up against Avengers Secret Wars, and you've got to work all of those characters in? There's no way, there's no space for it, there's no time. That would just be absolutely rushed. Whatever X-Men we get and during Avengers Secret Wars is going to be throwback X-Men that return from Fox and likewise in other multiversal variants in the multiverse, not this X-Men reboot. That's post-Avengers Secret Wars, and if his update is correct and it's 2027, that's the movie that comes right after Avengers Secret Wars. Again, very smart by Marvel to make sure that there isn't a loss of interest after what's going to hopefully be for them their biggest film ever. We'll drop the X-Men reboot right after it in this brand new timeline, whatever that looks like in the multiverse going forward. Sarah Finn is the person who's been doing the casting for Marvel Studios since day one with Robert Downey Jr. and pretty much every important role going forward. She's still doing that, but there's no way that they're casting the entire X-Men team without a director already attached, just the same way that Matt Shakman was directly involved with casting the Fantastic Four. So most likely from one of the big Hollywood trades, we're going to find out who the director is. You know, Deadline or the Hollywood Reporter will announce that, and then they'll get to casting, and we'll have rumors for another year, like I said in a previous video, just like we did for the Fantastic Four. I do not expect them to be dragging a cast for the X-Men reboot on stage if they are at San Diego Comic-Con or D23 this summer, because they're going to have just shot or still be working on Avengers Doomsday, or 2 Avengers movies to go. That would be way ahead of themselves, already focusing on that film. They're going to put all their eggs in the 2 Avengers baskets. I am completely surprised that the studio would even want to be shooting X-Men at the same time as Avengers Secret Wars. I mean, talk about so much pressure. And that also means that the box office for Marvel Studios in 2027 might be the craziest box office we've ever seen. And then the plan starts to make sense, right? You hear all these rumors about Marvel sort of losing steam and them not making as much money as the box office, not being profitable, rolling back how many movies they're putting out. And what they're really doing, looks like right now, is gearing up to again make 2027 on paper their best box office year by numbers ever. And man, you can imagine Avengers Secret Wars right into X-Men might do just that. Now that only really leaves one question as to who in the world is going to be directing the X-Men films. And I've thought a lot about who I would want to have direct the X-Men film in a lot of these videos as I've been doing it, because there were some names that I talked about here at the channel that I think have grown way past their prime. For instance, coming off watching the Justice League cut of Zack Snyder's, I was like, man, he would do an awesome X-Men movie. Then he did Rebel Moon, and man, I wanted to like Rebel Moon so much, and I actually think there are elements of Rebel Moon that are very interesting. I tried to get into it, but man, there are so many things about both of those films. I just cannot. It's not tenable. I would like to apologize for suggesting his name. I actually have come down to two names, one of which is ridiculous and will never happen, but I would be living in the best timeline if it did. The other one is kind of crazy. The first one is Quentin Tarantino's X-Men. I don't know what sort of weird timeline that actually works out. I think we're pretty lucky that Quentin Tarantino at least apparently appears successful, because otherwise he might have to take a project like this if things went different. That would be amazing. I would be all for that. Outside of the fact that that will never happen under any circumstance ever. Because listen, I was the guy pulling for Quentin Tarantino's Fantastic Four. I think that might have even been more awesome. What about Chad Stahelski, the guy who did the John Wick films, who was interested in Blade, but what if we just let him do like a very visceral take on X-Men? Man, that probably won't happen either. And I hope that Chad and Marvel have at least talked and they do put him in charge of Blade, because he was publicly campaigning for that before the job became reavailable, because all of the directors and writers and everything fell off that project. So who knows what the future holds, but listen, I am all ears. Who do you have for the X-Men, not Christopher Nolan? I won't even acknowledge those comments, but I do want to see who you guys got. I'm all ears, because right now I feel like the pool of directors is thin. If it's not the Russos, and let's face it, if they're doing Secret Wars and filming that in 2026, they're not directing X-Men. They're just not. That's not happening in this. It's just impossible. All right, quickly, the giveaway stuff. Still giving away PlayStations. We've been doing that. We're still doing it. Just be a sub and leave a comment. That's all it is. Find me on Instagram, Twitter. I am Fires. Also find me on all platforms with original music under the name All Fires. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.